My name is Drew Beckus. I'm a recovered drug addict.
Drew.
Hey, boys. I'm trying to be on my best behavior because this recording's going right now. My sobriety date is February 13th of 2019. And I'm thank you, Tommy, for having me here tonight to talk about a step that has changed for me the longer that I've done this. I believe the longer that we do this stuff, the simpler it becomes, but inevitably what begins to happen as we tap into this power that this, the second step kind of alludes to, starts to touch different areas of my life than it did when I first got here, which makes it more complicated too, because I've got to be willing to let this God that I don't understand fully, especially when I first get here, into every part of it. And in the beginning, man, it was simple for me to come to the conclusion that I needed God in relation to my alcoholism, right? The second step is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And the sanity that they're referring to is this insane idea that I can drink successfully, or I can, I said drug addict, right? Thank God. That I can do drugs successfully. I can do meth like a gentleman, like a normal person. And that power never manifested itself until I joined, I worked a 12-step program, basically. And this book that we work out of, I believe, does a wonderful job of setting us up ever so perfectly for this conclusion that we get led to in this second step, which is that I'm in trouble and I need some help. And, they spend the first 43 pages of this book, in the doctor's opinion, talking about one thing and one thing only, and it's the disease of addiction, right? This thing in me that takes me back to whatever I'm into at the time, whatever substance I'm feeling, whatever season of life I'm in. Inevitably, it takes me back to it, no matter how good or how bad my life gets. And this guy Bill does a wonderful job of kind of painting us into this corner. But I'm going to read a little bit out of I'm going to read a lot of it out of We Agnostics. Hope that's all right with the 8 of us that are in the room tonight. And I'll say this real quick. I know we're joking around, but I'm here and not at home enjoying my wonderful life, an hour away, because I believe that there's something that happens here that I won't get at home, right? That I still believe today, years removed from my last whatever, that it is up to me to tap into this power. And I'm convinced that I've lost the power of choice in drink or drug, but I've gained access to the choice to participate or not. And it's because I still believe what they talk about on page 44. They give us this one last qualification, right? If when you honestly want to, you find that you cannot quit entirely. And that was certainly true for me. I desired so badly to recover from consequences or to get off probation or all this stuff, and I couldn't pull it off, right? Drug tests hanging over my head, I still couldn't. I couldn't stop myself from getting loaded, right? Or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take. That was true for me probably from the beginning. It says here you're probably alcoholic, and if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. That's still true for me today, right? That is still what I'm up against here. I still need a miracle for this stuff to be conquered. And what's changed between now and when I first approached this was I've been shown how to tap into this power, right? And I believe that they do a wonderful job in this chapter of making this stuff very, very simple, right? They kind of lay it out exactly. They lay it out for us pretty cut and dry. On page 45, it talks about lack of power. That is our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And me coming to a place where I can even start to consider a God or a higher power, whatever doesn't chap your hiney, is predicated on me understanding what it is that I'm up against, right? And that's why this first step is so crucial, right? I have to really believe that what I am is I'm powerless over this stuff and that my life is unmanageable with or without it. And coming to the place where I was so miserable sober really, really made a wonderful case for why I should probably seek some kind of power. And lucky for us, like it says in that chapter, right? That's exactly what this book is about. It's going to direct me towards some kind of power. And I didn't know that, my vain attempts at trying to get sober and get my life good enough to where, I don't know if I was trying to get my life good enough to where drugs and everything else didn't seem that important. I really thought I would kind of outgrow this shit at a certain point, but that didn't happen. So they present me with this thing, right? I'm screwed. I need a spiritual experience. That's what we've got here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then this guy Bill does this wonderful job. He's a salesman like me. There's an old sales term that talks about closing all the doors, right? We want to close the doors to all the objections of my potential client, and that's what Bill does with me here in this chapter, right? Because I start hearing about this God idea, and what inevitably comes to my mind is my old ideas about God. And my understanding of God before I got here was like it's this dude that we went and visited on like Sunday at this church. I went back to that church recently. I felt just about the same about it at 6 years sober that I did when I was a kid. I didn't understand what was going on. It's like it's Greek Orthodox church. There's just two old guys that like chant at each other the entire time, and then a guy comes out and shakes some incense at you, and then you drink wine and you have a piece of bread and you leave. And I never connected to that, right? Because I didn't see a need for God. But it says in this book, right, much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. I thought that there was like one path to God, and it was the God that like my grandfather, this guy believes, my grandfather, not one of us, man. This guy is devout. He's there every Sunday. I didn't know that there was a different way, right? My own conception. I hadn't even considered the possibility of trying to make my own God. That wasn't something that I was led to naturally. But faced with alcoholic or addict destruction, we make a pretty solid case for why I should seek God. And it gives us a couple more things here. It says, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. The sponsor that I had when I first got here let me make my own God. I wrote like 6 attributes on a piece of paper, and that's what I started praying to. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe? That's how simple they make this, that there is a power greater than myself. And then give us a promise here. As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. And I don't know if I was here when I was new, trying to build this beautiful spiritual structure, right? I don't know if that was my goal here, but I was convinced that I was in enough pain, because I was in enough pain that my best attempts at anything got me here, right? And in the beginning, man, this stuff is really simple. I think that I'm powerless. I need a power, right? And I get shown how to tap into that power. And what that looked like for me very early on is the men that, you guys are in this room tonight, told me is that the problem centers in my mind, right? This insane idea that I can drink or do drugs again, that starts in my mind. Every time I've ever relapsed, I've been sober. It's the weirdest thing. You kind of have to be sober to relapse. And I found some excuse, right, whatever it may be, to start this stuff again. And it sets this thing off on me, and I'm on this hellacious run once again. They told me that the problem centers in my mind, right? The center of what I have, the crux of my problem is the way that I'm thinking before I relapse. It's this insanity. And that one day there will come a point where really I need God in front of that to not do that. And so what they showed me how to do was how to tap into power, right? In ways that it didn't look like going to watch 2 old guys chant at each other on Sunday. It didn't look like saying a prayer before like I ate dinner or something. It looked like showing up to a meeting and like moving chairs around and cleaning coffee pots and shaking people's hands at the door and getting a list of phone numbers and call people. What was happening and what happened for me very, very slowly is that like the power that we have here in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was drawn towards it, right? And as I participated in it, I gained access to power. And what inevitably happened over time as I got closer to people in this fellowship, and is that the God in all of you convinced me of the God in me, right? I believe that there was some kind of power that we were all tapping into here by way of willingness and working these steps to the best of our ability. And I didn't have this overwhelming sense of peace right away. The obsession to use left me very quickly. Thank God for that. But what I was left with is this mind that is just busy, sober. That's the crux of my problem, is this sobriety deal that I have to do once you take away my solution. And I have to be shown how to tap into power. And this chapter just asks us to do a couple things, right? It asks us to lay aside prejudice, right? Our old ideas, and they make that very simple for us, right? Your old God doesn't work, great, make a new one. And to seek. And all that stuff looked like a lot of action that was pretty trivial at the time, but proved to be very effective as time went on. And my experience is just like it talks about in this chapter, right? When we saw solve their problems by simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. And my ideas did not work. At 21 years, 22 years old, I'm back in a halfway house again for the third time in a matter of like 3 years. I'm, for all intents and purposes, like homeless. Like, when I have to... if a qualification for me to live somewhere is that when I get there, I have to sign myself in as indigent, so I can't squat there, that's a pretty compelling reason why I need some kind of power, right? That is a great exemplification of powerlessness. But what I saw here was that this stuff was working, and like there's a guy, Tim, that we know that was at a retreat one time, and I think he was like coming off of he might have still been twacked out, I don't really know, but we're sitting in this circle around the fire, and he just goes, there's no way you guys are all lying to me. And I was like, that's a pretty good summary of my second step experience, was just coming to this conclusion that if I have what you have and I continue to do what you do, there's no way that you guys are lying to me. And the rest of you seem pretty happy and sober at the same time, which I hadn't experienced yet, right? So my understanding and my relationship with God is just changed tenfold, right? And my experience with God is not unlike my experience with drugs or alcohol. Like in the beginning, when I first started getting loaded, I need this much to get where I'm going. And it's kind of the same thing when I got here with God, right? I needed this much God. For those of you listening, I'm holding like an inch. I just need a little teensy bit of God, right? I turn my attention towards him just a little bit, and he's there, right? There's what do they say? He's like a perfect gentleman. But just like drugs, like over time, my tolerance grows to this stuff, and I can have the same experience with God working a 12-step I can work on a 12-step program, right? But the difference is that this tolerance comes from like my ego, right? Because I'm convinced I can't control and enjoy my drinking. And what can start to happen is as I tap into this power, is I could really start to think that I can control and enjoy everything else, right? Like my relationships and my financial problems and where I live. And I get my grimy little hands all over this stuff, and I start to experience what it talks about on page 52, like these bedevilments, right? I thought I would be just like free of this stuff, but it's I've got some of this stuff going on right now. We were having trouble with our personal relationships, right? We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression, couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. And that was certainly true for me when I got here, but man, it's like 1 to 6 of these can be true now, sober, years later, right? And, the question that I often find myself asking is how agnostic am I in my day-to-day dealings, right? I've got this wonderful life as a product of these 12 steps and, and a God that I don't understand now, but I'm in contact with and I know how to tap into. And yet I can still kind of box him out, right? And what that's looked like for me throughout the years is this worship of other things. At 3 years sober, it's I'm 23, 24 years old. It's time to get to work, man. It's time to really make something of yourself. And it's time to get a job. And I get a job that's 60 hours a week and has me so far away from home. And all of a sudden I've got no time to tap into this power, right? I have the availability for one meeting a week, and it's my home group, and I show up there and I'm tired from the week and I don't say hi to any new guys, and I maybe go out to dinner and I go home and that's it. And I don't know that is a subtle way that I am starting to be pulled away from these things my feet do, which keep me relatively happy and sober at the same time. I've had the same thing with relationships where she's the one, man, and it's time to really put a lot of time and attention into maintaining this relationship. And all of a sudden I'm not going out to fellowship with people, especially the one I'm referring to was in this fellowship, and I don't want to bring her out around my friends. I don't want, what would they think of me? And I'm just slowly inching away from this power, right? And it's this ego, this amazing regeneration of this ego, which just builds this tolerance to God, and all of a sudden it's just not working like it used to, right? And I yearn for a day where I don't have to approach God in a certain area. Because with alcohol, man, my ass was whooped. I had enough pain. Here, take this, but sex, I don't know, that was not my first instinct to bring that to God. My finances, that seems like something that I should be handling. And there's, thank God we do this stuff in order, but these decisions that we make later on to turn our will and our life or our thoughts, our action over to God, is really me being predicated once again on my ideas not working and believing that this God idea can. And like I said, I can't wait for a day where I don't have to be in a tremendous amount of pain before I'm willing to surrender it to God, but that has not been my experience. I have become alcoholic, crushed by a self-imposed crisis in all areas of my life to this point. I'm sure that I have some greater understandings to come into, but what has happened for me over time is really a repeat of what happened when I first got here, which is that I have enough experience that my life doesn't, or my life is really not my business, and I'm willing to turn it over to God like a kid, right? Like with a humble willingness. And he does that, and he takes care of it, and he always has. And my understanding and my relationship with God has changed tremendously the longer that I do this stuff. But I pray that the longer that I do this, I don't lose sight of the fact that without some kind of power, I am really screwed, and that I'm just as capable of suffering from these bedevilments now than I was when I first got here. And I pray that I don't lose a taste for the simple, small, repetitive actions that have kept me sober and have kept me like usefully whole in this 12-step deal that we're lucky to partake in, right? Because that's the way I see it, man. As you know, we're all joking. There's 8 of us in here tonight or whatever, but it is like truly a pleasure to do anything for this deal because I believe that there's a power that I can tap into here that I just can't get at home, right? And it's my approaches to these power and my willingness to do so that matter. It's not really about how well I do it or how effective I am. It's the simple willingness to do so, and a lot of that I learned here in the second step, right? That lay aside my old ideas. I think I need 30 people in the meeting for it to be fruitful. That's bullshit. And to seek, right? And that's ultimately what we're doing here. So, what a God we serve here, and thank God that the way that I was able to approach Him was kind of laid out for me in this book, and I didn't have to reinvent the wheel or try to find Him on my own. That we get to trudge a road towards happy destiny together and along spiritual guidelines that look nothing like what I thought they would when I got here, but it's pretty simple today. So thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Drew. Thank you, Drew.